František had some trouble. He was really living in a bubble. He wanted to make it better, so he sat down to write a letter. He thought of who to write it to. He thought of everyone he knew. A lot of people hate their dad. It is not exactly a new fad. It was the best letter ever sent. With his life, he certainly was not content. He composed a masterpiece he'd have thrown out, but František needed it off his chest, no doubt. František started listing his complaints, and he didn't show any restraints. His dad had kept him from his pearl, the one whose hair was always in curls, though she never got his wanted permission, because in his eyes she was just a magician, aimlessly banging away at a drum, or picking up everything she could strum. I promise it isn't the money I'm looking for. She would at all times on her knees implore. It was the best letter never sent. With his life he certainly was not content. He composed a masterpiece he'd have thrown out, but František needed it off his chest, no doubt. František wrote to his dad he hates his 9 to 5. Is this what everybody has to do to survive? Punch in a few numbers, figures, and safety instructions? Or looking at my health insurance deductions? I want to be a traveler, a hunter, or a drifter, not worrying whether my problems are mountain swifter. Or maybe I can stay in and ride at all hours a day, not experience any noise but the showers. Please don't make me go in tomorrow, I can't take it. They can't fire me, because I just quit. It was the best letter never sent. With his life, he certainly was not content. He composed a masterpiece he'd have thrown out, but František needed it off his chest, no doubt. František's father seemed to bow 8 times a day, and read his book and then constantly be compelled to pray, and visit the sacred places and touch all the bones. He was always concerned about what would happen to his bones. František didn't believe, and for this he was disapproved. The chanting outside the door wouldn't make him move. Still, his dad put him in a tie in the sacred week, and made sure above all his personal appearance was sleek. To František's complaints, his dad only shushed, placing his fingers on his lips in a move of disgust. It was the best letter never sent. With his life he certainly was not content. He composed a masterpiece he'd have thrown out, but František needed it off his chest, no doubt. František's father brought him into such a terror that every time the door slammed, he feared his error. What had he done wrong today, or had he failed to accomplish the task that had been left detailed on a list with a time stamped for completion? Each ounce of his energy was marked off for depletion. His flying rage would make him cower in the corner, as if this would justify the action of the scorner. The letter served as a protest of the fury. He was trembling from the radiation like Madame Curie. It was the best letter never sent. With his life, he certainly was not content. He composed a masterpiece he'd have thrown out, but František needed it off his chest, no doubt. František complained that when he was a young boy, out the door he was kept out and left to enjoy the freezing weather in the middle of the night. and that's what he gets just out of spite. Despite how he slammed against the door and shouted, František would not find the style of parenting touted in all the books he'd later read at university. And in this letter he'd point out all the perversity of the physical discipline that did not correct, but had not only his childhood, but his adulthood wrecked. It was the best letter never sent. With his life, he certainly was not content. He composed a masterpiece he'd have thrown out, but František needed it off his chest, no doubt. From the seat of his chair he understood everything that the world had to offer in the reverie of the dreamers who try to do things like his son, who don't see that life is nothing but a hit and run. Every time František tried to communicate his dreams, he'd spend his time defunding all of his schemes. When he'd written a book, his father had it shredded and chastises him for trying to be so big-headed. But be honest, you can't take all the opinions in. It would make you ashamed to be his kin. It was the best letter never sent. With his life, he certainly was not content. He composed a masterpiece he'd have thrown out, but František needed off his chest, no doubt. But now, František's problems developed. In fact, he now felt completely enveloped. It became an issue of delivery, perhaps to give it to some man in livery, or to the postman who was running late, a man who couldn't carry his own weight. It's no matter that this would be informal, and little František wanted to be normal. He could always take it in his palm, but instead, he gave it to his mom. It was the best letter never sent. With his life, he certainly was not content. He composed a masterpiece he'd have thrown out, but František needed off his chest, no doubt. František's mother read the abominable letter. She felt something crawling in her sweater. How can you live with a man your son hates? Maybe she could wait this out until it abates. She read it again to make sure of all the contents. Maybe her son had misplaced a few accents, and those can drastically change the meaning, but things are still the same after the second screening. She looked closely at the return address. To not send it back there would be entirely careless. It was the best letter never sent. With his life, he certainly was not content. He composed a masterpiece he'd have thrown out, but František needed off his chest, no doubt. When František got the mail that day, he took it with him to read at the local cafe. He nearly spit out his tea when he saw his envelope. He cursed his father and abandoned all hope. His friend suggested that he try again, and that he channeled the rage by picking up his pen. František acted as to rip the thing to pieces, but his friend never let him give in to his caprices. He pocketed the letter for a later use. He'd bring it back out when he had an excuse. It was the best letter never sent. With his life, he certainly was not content. He composed a masterpiece he'd have thrown out, but František needed off his chest, no doubt. When it was flu season, František forgot his shot. His organs took off and tied into a knot. His father stood over him in perfect health. His power had worked in a way of stealth. See, I told you that you'd get it this way, but no matter what, I can't ever get you to sway. František wanted to speak, but his body rebelled. Every mean thing he wanted to say was withheld. After he croaked, his father lived a good 20 years, moving around in all his business spheres. It was the best letter never sent. With his life, he certainly was not content. He composed a masterpiece he'd have thrown out, but František needed it off his chest, no doubt. František's friend held on to this writing. He read it again and did not find it unexciting. That the father never read it is no matter. He wouldn't have unless a waiter served it on a platter. He gave it to some curators and gave it a new home, a place where people could read it safely under a dome, and reconsider František's life in their own, and whether or not it was time to step out their zone. Because all people face times of change, even if the furniture needs a rearrange. It was the best letter never sent. With his life, he certainly was not content. He composed a masterpiece he'd have thrown out, but František needed it off his chest, no doubt. When I saw it, I sat down to write something. Surely I had something to say that would make truth ring. I put something down, and then I put the whole thing down. If I ever actually finished it, I'd look like a clown. Best to keep everything the same and not step out. I've always found it best to keep to myself and not flout. So I'll wad up the paper and toss it in the trash. Better yet, I erase it, rip it up, and regret being so brash. I'd never write, and distraction will be calling back, which I guess makes my fate a little like František. It was the best letter never sent. With his life, he certainly was not content. He composed a masterpiece he'd have thrown out, but František needed it off his chest, no doubt. Now I'm only left to stop and reflect, and look around at cause and effect. I can be quite honest about my life, and how the unsent is filled with rife. I've burned out too many times. Maybe I should have handed out more times. People need them more than me, I never use them. After all this, who can I possibly condemn? When all of my plans and my future is wrecked, here I am today, only able to think of little František. It was the best letter ever sent. With his life, he certainly was not content. He composed a masterpiece he'd have thrown out, but František needed off his chest, no doubt.